Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're looking ahead to the year 2023 and considering the possibility of a recession. What does that mean for the technology sector? To explore that, I'm joined by Andrew Duncan, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Partner of Infosys Consulting. Andrew, very good to have you with us today.
Jim, thank you, sir. Pleasure to be here.
So I think it's interesting about the recession that we think may be coming or is probably coming. It feels to me the most telegraphed recession I've ever seen. I mean, usually we end up in a recession and the headlines say, layoff, bad news, slow sales. But this one is like it's on the way and we're talking about it. Is it going to be a soft landing, a hard landing? It's the most jawboned recession I've ever known. Has that been your experience of this one?
Yeah, no, it's definitely out there as sort of heavy jawboning. I think there are even various factions now which say, well, we've come out the other end and the recession's over. I mean,
I haven't heard that one, but I hope that one's true.
So do I. I mean, I've had parts of my North American business just saying, look, we're here if you want to learn anything about being in a recession, to my European business. So yeah, I think it's everybody's all over the place, and you throw in wars and inflation and taxes and flocks of locusts and parents in from out of town and all that stuff. Who knows what's going on, but it's tough times. There's no doubt. There are definite headwinds there across numerous sectors. They're pretty evident.
Yeah, no, I think parents in from out of town could be one of the headwinds. But on a more sober note, let's just say that we assume that there is at least a slowdown coming, if not an outright recession in the year 2023. How do you expect this? Big question. How would you expect this to influence the tech sector in the coming year?
Yeah, I think the I suppose predictable prediction would be, oof, it's bad, it's not going to be good. But actually, I think technology, for the most part, when we hit headwinds like this, actually sees it as an opportunity to embrace bigger and better things. And what I mean by that is it forces businesses to start looking at how they mitigate risk of downturn or reducing performance. It actually forces organizations to really focus down on how can they actually drive greater efficiencies, obviously to answer the needs and requirements of their shareholder base. It brings a focus or an optic to profitability. It brings a focus and an optic to sort of customer engagement and sort of how do we engage with our customers better, so we not only retain them, but potentially they could actually become more loyal or better customers to us. So there's a variety of different dimensions that technology can help, and all a slowdown does is bring this sort of optic down to a pretty acute focus of it's no longer a sort of, I could get around to that when I have time. It's I need to do it because my business, my top line, my bottom line, my customer base is under pressure, and I need to respond. And I think technologies, for the most part, can help businesses respond on a variety of different facets and planes, and that's basically what we do in these downturns. So tech in broad terms, I think, Jim, is a bit counterintuitive in what it does. It's actually an opportunity, probably more than a sort of, oh wow, things are getting tight.
On that very note, it feels like it's almost like the technology sector is acting like we're deep in a recession, because the technology sector alone has had all these layoffs. We hear, large numbers of layoffs at some of the larger brand name technology companies. And I think it seems to be they overhired in the pandemic, and now we're seeing big numbers. It feels like, oh, the tech sector is really distressed. When my experience of the tech sector is that it never really stops growing. It only, the rate of growth may slow, and then certain years it has a lot of growth, some years it has modest growth, but it never really stops growing. I mean, a real tech recession, I'm not expecting that next year.
No, I think that's totally fair. I think the tech industry will continue to grow and will continue to be in an upward trajectory. I do think what we've seen in recent times is the fallout of probably some over frothiness, if that's a word, where I think people may have got a bit too overly exuberant, to use another word out of the city I'm sitting in today. And I think there are just natural corrections to that sort of behavior. But the fundamentals, the underpinnings of what is tech, I mean, if you look at the businesses or the broad businesses, the systems integrators and their quarterly results, they continue to march up, maybe not march up as sharply as they used to in the last couple of years, but there's still very much a sort of a solid undertrend there of growth.
Then there's the umbrella topic of digital transformation. It's really been a buzzword these past few years. It's the idea of using technology to streamline workflow, which is probably not new, but certainly we throw around the word digital transformation more than we ever used to. What do you think will drive digital transformation in the year ahead?
I'm going to sound fairly predictable here, but data. It's all
Data.
about, it's all
I
about
think you have to be right, right.
yeah, I mean, so I think people are beginning to, organizations and indeed customers in broad terms are beginning to realize what a valuable commodity it is and how widely available it is. And I think a lot of digital transformations are focused on how do they get their arms around that pure volume of data and make some sense out of it, and then present it back in a fashion which from which you can disseminate real action, real information. So I think there's a lot of data out there on a variety of topics. There's a lot of it's been very much focused as we head in towards January and the whole World Economic Forum. You have a big ESG focus there, and it's getting quite interesting watching that whole forum where you sort of a couple of years ago it was aspiring to sort of monitor things on an environmental and social level, and now we're actually being held to account because we now have tools that can not only capture the data but then start actually reporting on what it actually means, which in some instances isn't as comfortable reading as people would like. But no, I think the data for the most part is the responsible element here, and people are beginning to use it and apply it right across business on a variety of different agendas, and that definitely is accelerating. There is no doubt. And so you'll see more and more of the AI, the digital data science, and things really forcing the issue. And on the ESG agenda, you'll look at people being held to account to greenwashing. While we've always known it's there, in some degree, it's now being proven. And so people are being a bit more cautious about how circular their supply chains are. That's an example.
Yeah, I think you must be right about the data piece, clearly. What strikes me in the world of data is that certainly companies are using it more than ever, but I still sense a kind of a reluctance. Plenty of executives still want to run the business, with gut instinct. I think sometimes there's a lot of lip service paid to data, and I know companies know they need to use data more, but I still sense this kind of reluctance, like, can't we just see how we feel about it?
I think there's I get your point entirely, but I do think in recent times there is so much data available across, let's say, a value chain of a business, and you've got all these signals coming in across that value chain of what is happening or not happening, as the case may be, across what is probably quite a complex ecosystem and probably spread halfway around the planet and back. And so if you were to monitor all that data, assimilate all that data, and start making decisions on all that data in a timely basis across something that complicated, you're probably going to set yourself up to fail. And in today's world, with the likes of sort of supply chain control towers and stuff, I mean, it's actually a lot of focus on recognizing where the data is generated, how to capture it so you can put it into a useful form, and then how you process it to actually make smart decisions quickly. And if you can do that as a business, and your competitor can't, or your competitor is absolutely insistent they want more manual intervention, guess who's going to win the race? Because it's the gap between you and them is going to get bigger and bigger. So part of it is it's just whatever others are doing around you. You've got this ambient sort of force out there which is forcing you to become or engage in the digital transformation journey. And we've clients. I mean, I've got very traditional financial services clients who have been around the periphery of this thing for several years, who are now going, you know what, we've got to really engage. We're missing the boat. And I think an opportunity is with these headwinds and downturns, you can actually catch up and get on the boat and catch up pretty quickly, quite quietly, because there are a load of other sort of distractions out there.
Let's talk about supply chains. I've been amazed. I mean, supply chains have been with us for many, many years, and most of those years we hear almost nothing about them. Of course, in the last 2, 3, 4 years, we've heard a lot about supply chains. You've made a comment which I think is interesting. I think you mentioned how supply chain control towers will be critical for achieving resiliency. What do you mean by that?
So resiliency is all about sort of when something unpredictable happens, being able to handle it and deal with it or mitigate against it fast. That's what resiliency is, as opposed to going, ooh, we just lost something and we're going to have to think about it for a while. And supply chains supply chain towers are essentially designed to give you an early warning system on those things going bump in the night, is how I explain it to the layman. And it's not only recognizing recognizing when things go bump in the night, but it's also being plugged in enough so you can actually do something about it in the here and now. So when you see something going off, so whether I'll put it in very simplistic terms, if you're in road logistics, and you're shipping a whole bunch of Christmas presents from point A to point B, and there are 3 roads between point A and point B, and the main road you use, which is the shortest and most efficient, route A, is now jammed because someone jackknifed a trailer on it. It's going to be 6 hours to clear. You want to be able to recognize that that's happened, and then if you've recognized it early enough, reroute your trailer up route B or route C so you can get to the destination. And it's having the ability, it's sort of bringing a sense of real time to very important business decisions. In this case, supply chain, but that's basically what, when people say resiliency, it's having the resiliency to actually absorb a shock, do something about it in the here and now, and then plan or mitigate against it right now. So it's as if nothing happened, and thereby achieve resiliency.
So a big part of that resiliency is monitoring and observation, having really a global view of the whole process.
24/7 as well. It's not a 9 to 5 thing. It's every hour of the day, every day of the week. And that's the modern supply chain. They don't shut down. It's
Right.
They go on worldwide all day long.
Let's dare to look beyond next year. Let's look out into the future. Always perilous in the world of technology because things change so quickly. But what's a core tech trend or a couple of core tech trends that companies need to know about now and need to start preparing for now?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things which is definitely beginning to hit prime time is the whole thing around edge computing, and we've heard and read a lot about that over the years. But it's really coming into its own. I mean, the ability of sensors to pick up things in the environment and then feed them into control towers or whatever for that data to be processed. I think that you will see a lot more of a substantial and expanding presence around edge computing. You may have heard about this thing or a phrase called vertical AI, which is where you use artificial intelligence to go end to end, sort of top to bottom, to solve not only problems but also drive far more intense and greater value propositions. And there are various examples of that, particularly say in healthcare, where you start seeing sort of essentially scans of potentially carcinogenic material or a sort of, let's say, a mole on your skin, and you can actually look at the image and then determine sort of if something's going on, if it is going on, what's going on, if it's of a particular type, actually bringing in someone else to get involved to figure out what's going on, and then actually prescribing a treatment or solutions in order to sort out the problem. And that becomes it becomes a very compressed decision tree and a very, very finite and accurate decision tree being pointed in a very specific direction. So I think you'll see a lot more of this sort of vertical AI application. I think we've all been reading about this thing, the metaverse, and I've actually been exposed to various companies trying to or wanting to embrace it. And it's still, I'd say, it's definitely in its evolution. It hasn't, I don't think, got to prime time yet. But what is prime time out there is there's the security risk that it represents to one and all who goes anywhere near it. And I think with cybersecurity, or the whole topic of cybersecurity, is getting a lot more advanced in its maturity. And I think the timing of that couldn't be better, because we've got a whole metaverse out there waiting for cyber to get involved, because it is a fairly scary world and can become even more so very quickly as we learn to sort of navigate around it and understand the boundaries. And probably the last thing, which is, again, it's been going on for a while, but because of that thing called data we spoke about earlier, it's becoming more and more intense, is the whole world of hyper-personalization. Stuff which becomes very, very tailored to you as the consumer or a particular use case. And we see more and more of that in CRM, or what people say, it's no longer customer relationship management, it's customer experience management. So you see that move from CRM to CXM and such. But yeah, the whole world of hyper-personalization, either on a B2B or B2B2C narrative, is, you'll see, I think, a fairly dramatic increase of that, primarily enabled by data.
Well, the interesting about the security in the metaverse piece, and that clearly anything that creates more attack vectors, as the metaverse will make cybersecurity a harder job. It does seem, I think it's interesting about the metaverse in that a lot of people disparage the metaverse because apparently, among other companies, Facebook is looking ahead and investing in it and not having slow results. But it seems like the metaverse, even though people throw shade at it, is definitely inevitable, because we're already immersed in our computing environment as pretty much as we can be. So how could we not eventually evolve into the metaverse? It feels like inevitable to me.
It is, and it's kind of, from my standpoint, it's you've got to be careful we don't try and make it be all to everybody, because it isn't. It's just not. It's the wrong medium. But I was shown a use case last week, actually, at one of our labs, here in the States, where we're using it to allow consumers to actually walk onto a land development and walk around the house they're thinking of having built for them on the side of a road or the end of a cul-de-sac. Jim, it was frightening how realistic it was.
Really?
All
Wow.
done in the metaverse. So there is I think, a very good use case of where the metaverse can really help. So I know you and I probably both do, where we're buying houses on spec and you're kind of rolling the dice a bit. Well, go into the metaverse and walk through the house. You can then not only walk through the house, you can decorate it, move furniture around. I mean, it blew my mind. And that's an example where even me, as a somewhat cynic of the metaverse in its maturity today, it's coming. But I would also caution people not to think it's going to be the be all end all, because it isn't. It's going to have very specific high value use cases.
Andrew, I think you said it. A lot of interesting stuff. I definitely learned some things. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise today, and come back and talk to us again sometime.
No, Jim, I enjoy that, and thanks for making the time, and happy holidays to you.
Same to you.
All righty, sir.